very good day to you. Welcome to another interesting episode of the Kanini Talk here on Herman Manyora's YouTube channel. My name is Evan Sokinyi. It's such a pleasure to have you on board. Definitely, it's been a while, ladies and gentlemen, before we have these conversations here. Conversations that we do hope that will actually help in building this country. Of course, we are progressing with President William Ruto's administration, the Kenya Kwanza administration, and our crew is always on toes to ensure that we bring you up to date with comprehensive analysis of everything taking place in this country and abroad as well. Wherever you're watching us, know very well that we actually appreciate your viewership here. My name is Evans Okinyi. Now, actually today, to break the norm, we're not having Professor Herman Manyora as usual, but then he'll be back in a few. We are joined by one of the actually promising young leaders in this country. Of course, he's a lawyer by profession, so to say. My good friend here with the name Kidi Maaga.
Yes.
How are you, sir?
Good. Great seeing you. I am fired up. I am usually inspired when I see young people putting their foot forward.
Definitely.
Yourself, I'm seeing you have a very young crew. So it clearly indicates that Kenya is in the right trajectory.
Definitely.
When we have young people who are, making sure that they rise up to the challenges of the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. No, thank you for making time for us. Begin by actually telling us, who is Kidi Maaga?
Thank you, Evans. Kidi Maaga is God's instrument of love in a hurting world. He was born and bred in Migori. I read law at the University of Nairobi. I have had a chance to work in the governance space, particularly in the area of policy and governance. I am currently working with young people through what is called Interparties Youth Forum, an entity that seeks to strengthen youth voices in the governance space by making sure that we have a platform through which we anchor a dialogue among and between young people across the political divide to ensure that we channel the youth energy, imagination and intellect towards confronting the common challenges that are bedeviling not only the young people, but the entire population of this country. Thank you.
No, thank you so much. By the way, when I read that bit of you being the convener of the Interparty Youth Forum, that was a little bit interesting. Does it mean that all the political parties in Kenya, especially, are united when it comes to the young people?
Oh, yes. You realize, Evans, that in moments of adversity, like the present times, when the economy is underperforming, in part because of the global shocks, and also realizing that we've got a huge youth bulge. Moments such as this require that we forge pragmatic alliances, alliances that are premised on enlightened self-interest of the young people, and not only of the young people but of the entire segment of the country. But you realize that this unity of purpose sometimes has eluded us, because you realize that when you attempt to achieve it at the higher echelons of our political edifice, you realize that people begin to play identity politics. People begin to remind us of whom we worship. People remind us of our sexuality. People remind us of a lot of other things. The young people of this country have said that they will not be divided on the basis of those nefarious straitjackets, but that they will forge a unity of purpose. Because one thing that this country has always demonstrated, that whenever we match unity of purpose with imagination, we usually emerge strong as a country. And I will give you an example. In 2002, when the people of this country were sick and tired of the leadership of the then ruling party KANU, they came together, put aside their ethnicity, put aside their faith or religion, put aside all other differences that had been used previously to describe them, and lined behind one man called Moi Kibaki. In 2010, after the devastating post-election violence of 2008, people of Kenya came together through the unity of purpose, marched with imagination, and enacted and gave unto themselves the Constitution of Kenya 2010. In 2011, when there was devastating drought, people of Kenya came together through that unity of purpose, marched with imagination, and came up with what was called Kenyans for Kenya. We think that in moments such as this, a unity of purpose would help this country redirect itself towards its highest ideals.
Okay. Now, let's get in here. Of course, you are advocating for the youth unity there, in saying that definitely they've got to be part of the decision makers at the end of the day. Now, this begs a bigger question. So far, Kidi, in your own assessment, do you think that the youth have actually claimed their rightful space in governance in this country? Are they really on the discussion table? And if at all they are not, then what can actually be done to ensure that they are at the center of everything that is taking place within our country?
Evans, we have traveled a long road, but still there is still so much to do. There is so much work to do. There is so much ground still to be covered. There is still, so there's so much to be done. Because, for instance, you realize that pre-2010, the position of the young people was not properly anchored in the constitutions. But after the Constitution of Kenya 2010 and the subsequent Act of Parliament, the Political Parties Act, we have the position of young people being properly enshrined in the party constitutions and in the Act of Parliament, and of course in the Constitution. So then, but then you realize that bad habits die hard. So to a large extent, in the last 1 decade that we have had the new Constitution, we have seen more often than not youth participation being left to the periphery. More often their participation is used to meet the quota that we have young people. More often than not, sometimes there are political parties that have been deemed to use young people as purveyors of violence, to intimidate and heckle opponents. And there are instances where we have seen particularly young women who have not had it easy in the political space. They have had to grapple with, sexual predators, among other systemic and structural challenges that are all too common in politics. So, as much as we have made progress, but still there is so much that needs to be done. For instance, we are saying that a time has come when young people should now be given a chance. And they're not going to wait to be given that chance. They're going to grab it now to make sure that they participate in our governance, not as young people, but as members of the largest segment of society. Because so that when we have a country that is governed on the basis of the rule of law, on the basis of constitutionalism, on the basis of, our fundamental values, then when the rising tides would certainly lift all boats. But when the youth come together and isolate themselves, as has always been the norm, and then in the positions in their political parties, they are not given a chance to participate in where real decisions are made, say in the NECs. So their representation in the NEC is, very negligible. While the other segment of the society can easily outvote them even in the NEC, it therefore means that their participation is peripheral. We are saying that we want to get to a time where political parties can dominate young people as their presidential candidates. Because, to run for president, you only need to qualify to run for MP and have at least a bachelor's degree. So it means that we have got a lot of young people in this country who are ready to be president. Yes.
But of course, they must attain the 35 years
And
age.
that was a previous constitutional dispensation. Read your constitution.
Okay. Things are a little bit different here right now.
Yes.
So that age limit factor is no longer there.
Yes.
Thank you for informing me on that. Now, let's look at the life of young people in this country. And of course, I've heard you mention that kind of statement there. And previously, we've had the National Dialogue Committee, those engagements that were actually taking place.
Yes.
Remember, after the government decided to sit down with the opposition to look at some of the issues that the opposition was actually lamenting about, and that actually led us to the kind of chaos that we witnessed in the recent past.
Yes.
Now, there's a time that a number of young people, a clique of young people, especially led by your group, that is the Interparty Youth Forum, there was actually saying that the voice of the young people are not represented there, and therefore there are certain things that must actually be said, or rather should have actually been covered by the National Dialogue Committee. Now, one, I want to know whether you people successfully presented your views, and if at all you feel that they're going to be discussed, and that at the end of the day we're going to have something that will actually be beneficial to the young people as well.
About the National Dialogue, I would tell you that we did not present petitions to our petition or memorandum to it. Part of why we did not do that was that in our estimation, we had a feeling that the National Dialogue as it was constituted was wrong from the start.
Okay.
What in law you say it was wrong ab initio. Why do we feel that it was wrong? Because National Dialogue as it was conducted was not any different from such processes that have taken place before. And it is what you call elite settlement pacts. That when the political class, particularly those at the very top of the political food chain, disagree, then sometimes they engage the citizens of Kenya, particularly the ordinary poor young people, they use them to engage the police in running battles. Sometimes to a large extent you realize that it is to exact what you'd call political pound of flesh. And National Dialogue, as it was constituted, it appeared to us that the political class had exacted their pound of flesh, but if that was not the case, if they were interested in meaningful reforms, in meaningful diagnosis of the governance problems in this country, then they should not have started with the question of whom. They should have started with the question of what. But it looked like when the National Dialogue was convening, the prevailing question was the question of whom. And the young people, particularly IPYF, wanted representation, and we wrote letters to the co-chairmen telling them that, number one, they had not complied with Article 55 of the Constitution. Secondly, we felt that the Constitution was improper. Improper because the framing of the issues was going to boomerang on their faces. It may not boomerang in the here and now, but in the fullness of time. Okay. Because National Dialogue is not any different from the Kiraitu Orengo team of 2016. It is not any different from the IPPG deal. It is not any different from other elite settlement pacts that we have achieved before. So we felt that in the here and now, we should have, made bold decisions as a country. Now that eventually sense seemed to have prevailed among the political class and had agreed to resolve their issues through a conversation, we should have become more bolder and concern ourselves first with the question of what needs to be done, what needs to be fixed. And I will give you an example, if you indulge me a little longer. Part of the problems that are ailing this country is that after the enactment of the Constitution of Kenya 2010, we attempted to reintroduce revolutionary values. But then what we did is that these revolutionary values, we use them as aesthetics, not as substantive reforms. Because it is an exercise in futility in having elegant provisions of the Constitution as Chapter 6 is captured. And then you have the Leadership and Integrity Act that is actually a mockery of Chapter 6 of the Constitution. Understand? You have Article 10 of the Constitution, national values and principles of governance. And then the individuals and institutions that should have implemented Article 10 have failed to do so.
Okay.
You have seen we enacted, we gave unto ourselves what is called Chapter 15 commissions. And we even attempted to insulate them from political interference by giving people who hold those offices the security of tenure.
Okay.
But then you remember that former DPP was on record saying that he dragged people to court. He destroyed people's lives because of political pressure. So those are things we need to fix. If we do not fix that, even if we have the leader of super opposition or the leader of prime cabinet secretary or whatever names you want to give them, with intent toward the individuals, that will boomerang in the long run.
Okay. Because
we have not fixed the engine. Thank you.
I get you. Now, as we conclude this issue on the young people here and their future therein, there is always this issue of underemployment. There is unemployment that is actually facing us here.
Yes.
This is an issue that has been here with us for long. Do you think that the government of the day that we are having currently, Kenya Kwanza, does it actually inspire hope, or has it done enough to ensure that they solve the problem of youth unemployment? Because a number of young people are suffering outside here, yet they seem to think that perhaps the government is not doing enough. What do you think on your own perhaps assessment of the government's action so far?
I would say that, number one, let's begin with the fact that I have absolute faith in the president. That the president is one person who has capacity and capability to reform this country. One is that President Ruto, and like all the presidents we've had before him, is not only young, but is also very schooled and very alert. President Kibaki had a chance to reform this country. But President Kibaki was both sick and old when he was elected into office. And it therefore means that the cabal around him were able to quickly take advantage of him and repurpose the state towards serving private ends. And so you realize that by the time he was leaving, and then for instance, that is how Anglo-leasing that had been started during the dying days of Kanu metamorphosed into a full-blown scandal under NAC regime, a government that had come to power on the platform of zero tolerance to corruption. But then you realize that Kenya is very integrated into the global economy. So that there are things that the government may want to do, but the hands of the government may be tied because of the global shocks. Thirdly is that in the last 10 years, we accumulated so much debt. The tragedy is that we still continue to accumulate debt under the leadership of President William Ruto. It is something I hope that he will have to arrest very quickly, because it has capacity of undermining the goodwill that it still enjoys among Kenyans. But then I think that when we are able to deal with all that, the government may be able to address the question of unemployment. I will tell you that this government do not employ people. Government provide an enabling environment. But then that enabling environment begins with taxes. Part of the problem with the taxes is that we had accumulated so much debt in the last 10 years. There is so much pressure on the government towards the repayment of these taxes, debts, and therefore you realize that debt is the first charge on the consolidated fund. So when the government collects money, The last time I checked, it was up to 60 shillings for every 100 shillings collected was going towards repayment of debt.
Okay.
When you spend 60 shillings towards repayment of debt, you have got only 40 shillings left. Of the 40 shillings left, you need to pay salaries. You need to pay retirement benefits. You need to then engage in capital investment.
Okay.
Government create jobs through capital investments. So, because of the mistakes of that we have committed as a country in the last couple of years, may make it difficult for the government to quickly find its footing. What I believe the government should and must do with the agency is the question of fiscal consolidation, making sure that there is a prudence in spending of public finance, of public money. Because if you look at the report by the controller of budget, still there is a lot of, avoidable wastages. So if the government is able to arrest the wastages so that we don't spend a lot of money in domestic and foreign travels, some of those travels that do not add a lot of value, because remember President Kibaki was not traveling a lot, and he was able to get so much done. So I think that when the president is able to, arrest all that, then, I believe that he still has a chance to reform this country.
I do get you well, but then you've just made a statement here that the government actually does not actually create jobs or rather employ people, but create
they
that
create
kind
enabling
of
environment.
Enabling environment.
For private sector.
But why is it that this has never been on top of the manifestos of our various governments? I remember when the president came on board, he said that the young people are unemployed, and that is a fact. And he said that we are going to create employment for these young people. Recently, we've had the controversial housing levy bill here.
Yes.
Definitely, right now it's a tax that is actually being levied upon the Kenyans. The only explanation that the president gave to that was that he's creating jobs for the young people. The deputy president recently went to a graduation at the Jomo Kenyatta University of Agriculture and Technology and plainly told the graduates there, or other graduates at that particular moment, that there is no job outside here. All that we can do is that we've got a housing program. So my question is this: is there any deliberate plan of the Kenya Kwanza government that can actually solve this kind of crisis without having to blame anybody or without having to focus on any kind of mistake that we made in the past, but just focusing on the promises that they made
of the present?
Yeah.
I will tell you one thing, that the president rode to power on the platform of economic transformation. And when the president rode to power on the platform of economic transformation, 1 year down the line, that economic transformation has not taken root. And its signature program, the Hustler Fund, has also run into headwinds. There were media reports that up to 3 billion shillings still remains unpaid. Over and above that, remember that that because of the taxes that we have had to grapple with in the last 1 year, the shilling has lost its purchasing power significantly. One, because of the taxes. Two, because of the shilling tanking against the dollar. So all this, I think, is all this put together place the government in a very tight spot. And so back to your question, is there a deliberate plan to create jobs? I think that if the government is able to publish the better, what they call bottom-up economic transformative agenda, if they are able to reduce it into now a plan, like President Kibaki had the economic recovery, the poverty reduction survey paper of 2004, 2005. Then, President Kibaki had what is called, eventually had what was called Vision 2030. And then we had the medium-term plans. I think that that is something that the government may still want to do, so that then we are able to know as a country where we are coming from, where we are, and where we are headed. But still, I will tell you one thing, Evans, that I believe President Ruto is a man who is alert enough, intelligent enough, schooled enough, and politically savvy enough to make sure that he is able to navigate both the political nuances and the economic landmines to make sure that we are able to deliver to the people of Kenya the promise of upward social mobility.
Okay.
It may not happen in the here and now, but in the fullness of time, it will happen.
But in the meantime, youth unemployment is here to stay with us?
In the here and now, of course, a lot of young people are out of work. And it is not only young people, even people who are not necessarily young are not doing very well. The old are not doing very well.
Okay.
We may still want to reinvigorate our social protection programs. I do not want to be the prophet of doom. I believe that even in moments of adversity, we can dig deep within ourselves. And like someone once observed, that in the depth of winter, I learned that there is summer within me. I think that we must be able to excavate that summer within ourselves and be able to look at the promise that this country holds for all of us.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, that is it, ladies and gentlemen. We have actually been talking to one of the young promising leaders here, Kidi Maaga. Of course, he is a lawyer, but he's also a columnist with the Standard Media Group, therein penning his opinions and telling Kenyans what he actually thinks about. You've had this conversation here on the youth and whether their position definitely in the political sphere in this country. We are waiting to see whether their problems that are actually bedeviling the young people here will be solved by the government at the end of the day, or if at all, they will always be a campaign tool after every 5 years. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're watching us the first time, definitely do not fail to subscribe to our channel here, and thank you so much for keeping it here. Please weigh in on this conversation. Tell us what you think about the discussion herein, and of course stay tuned to some of our programs that will be coming up next. Such a pleasure to have you on board. Until such a time again on another episode of the Candid Talk, my name is Evans Okinyi. Thank you for watching.